Could I please introduce to you Wojciech Konstanty? Wojciech Konstanty is a graduate of the BA the BA program at the Advanced Hogeschool in Drenthe, the Netherlands. He is also has an MA from Krakow University in economics, from the management department, and that was in Poland. He also did his PhD studies at the Krakow University in economics as well. He is a published author, and he has published in the field of international trade, globalization, impact on trade, and particular markets. For the last 4 years, he has held various analytic and managerial positions in Mercury S.A. Capital Group, and currently he is the Director of Investments and Development in Polski Tyton in South Africa. Can we have a big ICD warm welcome for Mr. Konstanty? Thank you.
Well, first of all, is it on? Yes, it's on, all right. So thank you for the brilliant introduction. Well, to avoid confusion, it's not South Africa, actually, it's Poland. Well, this SA at the end stands for the incorporated company in Polish. Sorry. But nevertheless, well, ladies and gentlemen, a lot has been said here on the seminar about various forms of social and economic inequalities. And well, for some it may seem that this issue is relevant because we're in the times of European economic crisis. However, I would say this was always something relevant, and actually the state of society we have today is a direct effect of previous discussions in that area which were going on already for decades, maybe even centuries. So first remark would be that this is really something important to share the views, change the opinions, and to develop that subject. And I must tell you that having this wonderful opportunity to address such a splendid international audience, well, I was really thinking for a longer while on what grounds and perhaps theoretical basis I shall form this speech. And well, ultimately, I have decided to share with you my personal opinions, some conclusions which I drew out of observing Polish economy transformations, well, combined with both some practical knowledge about business operations in Poland as well as in other European countries. Well, my main aim here would be to show you the complexity of this issue from the market perspective and to extend the scope of debate to the area of providing equal chances in the business environment. Well, I will try to show you the problems I have witnessed and well, show as well the tools which were most effective applied to the economics. And well, I would like to use examples taken out from Polish economy. I would do it for two reasons. First of all, I think it would be more interesting for you that way. And secondly, I would encourage you to try to find parallels in between those factors I will show here and economies of your countries. So just to allow you to follow my presentation in a good way, I'm just showing you what would be the content. So first of all, I will do a small introduction to the subject to define the field I will be talking about. Then secondly, I will talk a little about Polish economic transformation. And I think this is quite an interesting example, since Poland, which I was born in, during the communist times, was well, a model of total equality state, so to speak. This was declared officially. So this is quite an interesting example, and I will show you how it worked from the inside and what has changed. Then I brought up some, well, two other examples. One would be kind of industry case study, which would show you some areas where actually the participation is denied for larger population to be active. I will show you some inequalities regarding market presence on the individual scale. And then at the end, a short summary. If you would have any questions, please note them down, and perhaps I would be able to answer them, maybe not directly after the lecture, but maybe in the next, during the next break. So, just a moment. All right. No, one slide. To discuss this issue further, we must have firstly defined economic inequalities. Well, I would use a sort of simplification because we have limited time. I would assume that most of other social, political, the whole range of other inequalities would be directly affected by economic inequalities at first place. And by saying that, I imply that they are quite important in a very, very wide scale. So, what is economic inequality? Well, the most simple definition would be that this is a disproportion in between incomes of society members. So the question remains how these disproportions are created. Well, the answer might seem obvious, but I will give you some examples. First of all, we have different wages and salaries for different jobs. Secondly, sometimes there is the case of unemployment. Well, there is also something called wealth accumulation. So basically, if you already have some money, you're most probably going to make much more in future. And the third factor, which strongly affects economic inequalities, is different access to education. This is also something important. And there are also two things which, well, they might be not as important in today's modern European circumstances. I mean, there used to be problems with racism, gender, or cultural discrimination. There used to be some organizations which actually promoted the inequalities just by the way they were organized. But I think that in European scale, those two factors are currently of, well, lower importance. In all, we can say that economic inequality would be a natural effect of any form of human activity. And as I said, what is important about it, well, it can easily lead to other social inequalities. So, one may say after hearing this, that, well, the simplest solution would be to eliminate all economic inequalities. And however, this problem is not as simple as it may seem. First of all, well, I consider that this would not be possible in normal economy. Perhaps we would need to design sort of a totalitarian state to make the society 100% equal. But by doing this, we would create other inequalities and we would just make human life miserable. Although it may seem shocking for some, there is also another side of this problem. Namely, inequalities themselves are seen by some as a driving force for development processes. You have to remember that, well, to invest in a new company, to create new jobs, wealth accumulation is actually a needed factor because you basically need money, an excessive amounts of money to create new companies. Well, diversity of views and aspirations is perceived as needed for overall society development. And mostly measurable financial incentives are, well, decisive factor combined with competition, combined with innovation, and combined with efficiency to develop the society as a whole. So the question would be here, what would be the balanced solution to approach this problem? And we can say that among some of the scholars, some of the political circles, there is a general consensus saying that what needs to be done is to equalize opportunities. And I would add to this also another thing, and this would be promoting participation of society members. So there would be two things I considered a balanced approach. This is One thing, this is equalization of opportunities, and the second thing is promoting of participation. Well, and during my life, I have actually seen combination of those tools working effectively during Polish economy transformation, and this is something I will devote several next minutes for. So let me tell you a story. I was born in communist Poland, and this country was theoretically a country where social equality was a major state foundation. Of course, well, the practice was quite different than the theory, and we have actually never achieved any benefits of this system. Although always equal, to give you a view, the Gini coefficient was about 0.25. This practically meant that most of society was actually living in relative poverty. And very soon it was realized that the whole concept, to keep it working, it has to be based on totalitarian basis. In this country, the whole economy was just a tool to realize a political agenda. And well, we have gone through different states of central planning. Basically, all production facilities were state controlled. Theoretically, there was no unemployment, but on the other hand, there was also no incentive for any activity. And this led to quite an unfortunate situation when demand for goods was actually never fully compensated with the proper supply. And well, in the early stages, this even led to the situation that there was a real danger of starvation in some areas. So I'm talking about actually very basic human needs. Of course, this system was not stable all the time. There were several attempts to modernize it. First one in 1956, well, using some occasion of swifts in global politics, the collectivization of agricultural property was stopped and some economic management was changed. Then in the 1970s, there was another idea. The country took loans from other countries, mainly Western countries, and invested them in industry, infrastructure, and research. And well, this reform, although it was initially successful, led to the practical bankruptcy in the end of the 80s. So the 80s were basically years when economy was a total failure, problems grew, there was constant inability to supply goods in sufficient numbers, and the government, well, they decided to ration goods. I mean that to buy basic products, one needed to have a special distribution card, and to buy meat, to buy sugar, buy clothing, and you have to remember that, well, things like cars, furniture, well, basic home appliances were practically out of reach for most of society that time. So ultimately, in 1989, this system collapsed. And well, since we have limited time, I would just like to show you, so not going into the complex aspect of the whole process, I would just like to show you some factors on individual scale that I think were decisive with this failure. So first of all, not all members of society in that times shared same views on political, social, and economic matters. And I'm afraid this happens in any artificially designed total equality system. And by this, lots of people were practically excluded from any participation. Secondly, there was, as I mentioned already, there was no real incentive for work results, no competition, no drive for innovations. Of course, jobs were assigned to anyone, but those included those with not proper skills, not proper encouragement, sometimes without proper education. well, most sadly, the managerial positions were assigned to people with, mostly to people without any preparation. And what was also a factor, people with above average potential and talent, with some aspirations, they usually tried, sometimes with a success, to emigrate to live to other countries. So this also, well, decreased the development of economy, the technological development. So the results were very, very poor. So we had overall weak quality of production. We had outdated technology. We had goods shortages, as I said. And in some areas, we had lack of development, or maybe insufficient development. This included infrastructure, education, technical knowledge. So consequently, we actually had no ability to compete on the international market, maybe except some very basic cheap products or raw materials. And well, the overall economy was weak. We had hyperinflation, the local currency was not exchangeable, there was a second black market with totally different prices, usually foreign currencies used on it. So the consequence was the total collapse of that system, and to give you a view at the end, the GDP per capita adjusted to purchasing power parity in current value was below $5,000 that time. So there was actually a great gap between Polish citizens and the citizens of other mainly Western European nations. So after this system collapsed in 1989, the series of political negotiation led to declaring the Act of Economic Freedom. This was a very, very short act, which was passed through the parliament, but basing on this law, actually anyone, for first time for the 60 years, anyone could start a business activity. So consequently, we have seen something which could be called as an explosion of entrepreneurship. Just several millions of companies were created. And well, this was also followed by other actions, namely the government companies were privatized. We had to stabilize the currency. We had to build the banking system. We had to build the stock market. We had to create the law that would actually meet the free market demands. But today, after 20 years after this, we can say that although some problems occurred during this transformation, it can be concluded that the general outcome was a success. We can simply find a measurable indicator to compare it. So as I told you, the GDP adjusted to the purchasing power parity was below 5,000, now is over 20,000 during the 20 years period. And perhaps, although there are currently larger gaps than there used to be in between income of wealthiest and the poorest citizens, the overall process dramatically increased the quality of life for anyone. And the mechanism that was most successful, in my opinion, in that transition period was, first of all, equalization of chances, so anyone could start an activity. And secondly, this was also encouragement for starting activity. And in my personal opinion, this is actually one of the best tools to increase overall social equality. Well, maybe it will not build income homogeneous groups, but will allow anyone to pursue aspirations and to try to maximize his personal income, of course, but resulting in increase of overall wealth and overall development for the whole society. It may seem today, analyzing Polish example, that we're still using this mechanism. However, I'm observing some indications that lead to, unfortunately, opposite conclusions. Well, first of all, state is trying to regulate most aspects of human life and economy. And theoretically, it is all fine because this is all aimed to build better more socially fair society. Practically, I'm afraid that we're fixing, when fixing some problems, we're just bringing up new ones. We're just creating new ones and placing them in the place of those that were fixed by certain regulation. So my strongest belief is that the economic inequality could be challenged with maximalized participation of society members in various forms of wealth creation. So this means that both chances should be given, such as, for example, education, such as, for example, set up companies loans, some incentives for small businesses, but we need also to give a ground. For instance, this would be a good law, but this should and must be accompanied by minimal barriers for development, because in other cases we're actually building society with what I called a glass ceilings. So we have large parts of society that are officially encouraged to take part, to participate, but actually they're not able to go through this selling. All right, so I maybe change a slide, go forward. All right. Today, Poland official sources report 1.9 million of companies. Well, the total number, including sole proprietors, is estimated, well, this would be the highest estimate, to 5 million companies. So, to give you a comparison, the total population in productive age this is in between 1864, reaches 24.5 million. And this number does not reflect the companies organized by Polish citizens in other European Union nations. However, we can speculate that about 20% of population is directly active in business field. Well, one might say this is a lot, but actually I found a research which was made 3 years ago, and this research shows that, well, actually 50% of adult population would be eager to participate and would be eager to organize a business. So the question would be why they are not doing so. And well, there was another research made just recently by one of notable research agencies, asking, they were actually serving those who were planning to open a business, but they did not do it finally, why they didn't. And well, I would say that the results were surprising, because, well, the highest number of indications, this is 50% of indications for the questions, why didn't you start your own business although you would like to, was the high taxes and fees. This was 50% of indications in that research, and I must, well, just let you know that overall taxation in Poland is still much lower than in most of Western countries. Second was the bothersome relations with administration. This was almost 33% of indications in that research, and this was followed by changeability of law. This was just one third of indications. There were also some indications about law of poor quality. So generally, some would expect here to find rather market or competition-based obstacles. And surprisingly, we see that actually this research showed that those people identified other obstacles which prevented them from taking part in active part in economic creation. And now I have a case study. I chose rather controversial industry, but I did it on purpose because it actually shows in a nutshell, very good, the effects of regulations in a particular business sector. This is the case of tobacco industry in Poland. And well, knowing the controversies, I will put aside for the purpose of this discussion all the health and social issues, I would call it a scientific approach. I would just like to analyze the phenomenon going on the market and the effects on the market, and draw some conclusions out of this. So, what was the market stage at the initial state? This was like 22 years ago. So that time, practically after economic transformation, anyone could start a business in this field. There were only two obstacles. You needed to have a capital or ability to provide it from somewhere, and you needed to have a know-how, because this is rather a simple product, but needs to be produced under specific technological rules. And that time, we had basically two types of companies. Those were large state-controlled companies, which were systematically sold to private investors, mostly large multinational companies, and small private initiatives. And we can speak that at the peak, the market consisted of about 25 factories operating in Poland. Obviously, that meant that there were some other companies created within the supply chain, but this is actually beyond the scope of current discussion. And well, the local companies were mostly producing low brands, short cigarettes, domestic brands, and large internationals entered with their brands, with international brands. And well, what was important at the initial state, the excise tax was formulated in a way that it deferred the amount of tax for 4 types of cigarettes. So basically, the shortest cigarettes produced domestically were cheapest, then the domestically produced low brands were a bit more expensive but still cheap. Then the foreign brands produced domestically were a bit cheap, a bit more expensive, and that at the top, the highest taxation was on the imported brands produced abroad. So actually, in this initial stage, the obvious situation happened. The large internationals took the top market, and the smaller local companies just placed them in some niches, used the price strategies, and they all actually had a minor market share, but much enough for them to continue operations. And from that point, there were various reasons for that, mainly advocated as establishing balanced excise amounts in the state budget, and of course there was the case of health and social regulations. Series of regulations was introduced. So firstly, from this very flat taxation rate, just connected with the amount of goods, the system was changed for the amount percentage model. So the excise was calculated as the percentage of retail price and amount for 4,000 pieces. Then what was also introduced, this was the minimal amount. The excise calculated was based on 3 factors. This was the percentage of retail price, normal amount, but if the amount, so-called minimal amount calculated basing on currently most widespread brand in particular segment was lower than the case of just I'm trying to explain it in a very, I would like, short way. So this worked in a way that they actually calculated the amount of excise based on the market prices. So if the initial calculations indicated that you actually have lower excise on your product, it was raised to the minimal amount calculated on the market segment. So what were the results of these changes? So first of all, as you can imagine, the market was reshaped, and what happened, the prices of traditionally cheap brands, low market, they were increased just within 2 or 3 years by 1/3, and meanwhile the prices of high-end market remained almost at the same level. So as a result, we had very, very flat pricing on the market. There were very little differences. And obviously, this led to well, bankruptcy of most of the smallest factories, because they were actually not able to compete in such rapidly changed environment. Some of medium companies actually tried to adapt to new circumstances by introducing new brands that would actually go to the higher segment and somehow compete with the most famous international now brands. However, what happened meanwhile was that simultaneously Poland introduced several bans on advertisement. So some brands were present on the market before the bans were introduced. They were promoted actually, and then at the end, when the rest would like to enter this field, the bans were introduced, and actually they prevented them from entering. So as a result, out of these 25 factories, we have actually only 4 right now. And well, those are large multinationals. There is no other smaller competitor active on the market except maybe 2 or 3 very, very small companies working on some branch niches like smoking, tobacco, something like that. But they're overall in very, very poor situation. There were some side effects, because there was a massive loss of jobs in this industry. Well, we face a problem currently of mass smuggle. We face a problem of people which actually worked for this industry, so they have the know-how knowledge. There is old equipment on the market, and they actually form a base for illegal production within the country. And well, I'm telling you this because this example shows in a nutshell how chances for participation in that particular field of wealth creation were denied. Because actually we have currently we have situation that there are some companies already operating, but there is no one able actually to join the market and to introduce any new products, because the chances of success are so extremely low that even possibly an industrial investor wouldn't manage to gain any sufficient market share. So these trends I'm talking about are also present, unfortunately, in other FMCG industries, and they're also a subject of rising regulations. And well, I'm afraid that the practical outcome for other businesses could be similar to the one that we have here. That is that the certain field would be actually closed for more participants will not be able to join it. Well, another example I would like to show you would go to the individual scale. And this is the issue that was actually widely debated in Poland recently, so possibly some regulations would be changed. However, this is still going on. Well, Poland is the -- 1 currently regarding the number of regulated professions. We have 334 according to Polish government sources, and over 374 according to European Union sources. Well, to cut this short, I will just tell you that this regulated professions, this practically means that the one wanting to start an activity in certain field has to, is a subject to different regulations. This could be licensing, this could be some professional examination, this could be inscription into formal government listing. And of course, there are professions such as doctors, bailiffs, lawyers that require such regulation. But there are also cases where we have people that have practical knowledge, that have practical experience. They are actually not able to enter the market. We also face the problem with the people who just enter higher education. They have the proper education, but for them to well, enter the market and to fulfill all the requirements, sometimes it means years. It could go for 5, 6 years just to gain basic inscription into the professional field. So just to sum up quickly, as you can see, I am not a supporter of sophisticated government regulations that are supposed to counter economic inequality within society. And of course, I assume that something needs to be done to equalize opportunities and to support participation. And countries use different tools on that. There are social transfers, education support, credits for startup businesses, and those are good tools. But I assume making chances equal must also be seen in the wider scope of business environment, and the chances need to be made equal there as well. So thank you for the ability to speak here. And if you would have any questions, I would gladly answer them after the lecture.
Thank you very much.